Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dabo Swinney, the Clemson Tigers, kicking off their spring game Saturday afternoon. And although there will be no TV broadcast, which hurts the fellas up in Rochester, New York, we're still going to learn a lot about this football team. I certainly will be dialed into the radio broadcast that they will be doing, reading all the notes coming out of the game. And I think what's fascinating about this Clemson team, heading into the spring game, heading into 2025, we don't have a ton of question marks about this football team. We know they're going to be really good in 2025. You basically took a college football playoff team that we saw in 2024. You add Tom Allen to the defensive side of the football, and you pretty much run it back going into 2025. They have a lot of questions answered, where there's a lot of other top college football programs across the country that are still trying to figure some things out. I'm approaching the Clemson spring game kind of like this. And we know this is a really good team. We're looking for some of those small storylines that we are still monitoring to see Clemson. Hey, can we not only just be a really good team in 2025? Can we be a great team in 2025? Can we go out and win a national championship, which I will say right now is certainly a possibility for this football team in 2025? I would argue that they're one of the teams to beat across the country going into the 2025 year. Now, what are some of those storylines that we're still monitoring for this Clemson football team? That's what I want to get into over the next 10, 15 minutes. Before we get into it, as always, to the Clemson fans, number one, y'all who are going to the spring game, let it fly in the comment section. I'm guessing that if you are listening to this episode, you're probably you live and breathe this Clemson football team. You're probably going to the spring game. Would love to hear how many of y'all are going to the spring game in the comment section. We're probably going to lean on you guys a little bit when we recap it. We're going to talk about it Saturday afternoon after the game concludes, but I'm going to be going off kind of the live updates and radio broadcast. So I'll probably lean on you guys in the comment section a little bit as well to fill in the gaps. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. It truly has been a blast talking this football team on the recruiting trail. What spring practice is going like means the world. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it. Now, probably question number one on the offensive side of the football. We ain't got many question marks about K. Klubnik. We ain't got many question marks about the offensive line. That, by the way, that's huge because we're talking about a lot of other teams in spring practice right now. They don't know who the quarterback's going to be. They don't know what their offensive line is going to look like. Clemson checks the two most important boxes that you could possibly check going into 2025. We know who the guy is at quarterback. He's going into year 3 as a starter, clearly getting better as a football player. And we have an offensive line that we have a lot of confidence in heading into 2025. There ain't many teams across the country that can say what Clemson's saying about those two units going into 2025. The number one question, I think, for every Clemson fan on offense is who emerges at running back. Now, throughout spring practice, you've heard all the right things from this position. And I think it starts with Adam Randall, where I'll put my hand up and say I was intrigued when I heard Adam Randall was going to make the full-time switch to the running back position, but I had my question marks. This is a guy that I think first and foremost has struggled to stay healthy during his early Clemson career. Now we're going to switch him to running back where he's going to be taking more hits. He's going to be a little bit more involved. My biggest question was, hey, can Adam Randall stay healthy at the running back position? Well, we've gone through spring practice. It sounds like Adam Randall's pretty dang healthy. That first and foremost, I think should excite a lot of Clemson fans because we know Adam Randall is a freak show from an athletic profile standpoint. There's a million different positions on the football field that Adam Randall can play. The idea of him staying healthy at running back was probably a big concern, not only for myself, but a lot of Clemson fans who follow this program. I think that's really intriguing that this is really one of the first off seasons that Adam Randall's been healthy for spring practice. I think secondly, really intrigued in terms of how we use Adam Randall at the running back position. I would be surprised if Adam Randall is a running back that takes 15 plus carries a game. But he's a really intriguing Swiss Army knife, you might say, at the running back position. Most importantly, running routes out of the backfield. I mean, you look at running backs pass catching, it's hard to find running backs who can do it at a high level in college. Adam Randall not only can do it, he could be elite at it. And at that running back spot, when you're coming out of the backfield and you're running your routes, you're normally matched up with linebackers. There ain't a linebacker in the country that can run with Adam Randall, especially with the route tree. What I'm most excited for is, hey, how do we use Adam Randall as a pass catcher out of the backfield? And how does he largely get used at the running back position in general? I was a fan of the switch because you look at the wide receiver room and say it's kind of loaded. It was hard to see Adam Randall being a significant contributor in the wide receiver room with how good this position is. Well, if we think he's one of the best athletes on the football team, figure out a way to get him involved. This could be a really effective way to allow Adam Randall, who's a really freaky dude, to have a role in this offense and go make plays. The second player, Gideon Davidson, for me, it's more of the small stuff. As a pure runner of the football, this kid is special. I mean, he's a 10.69 guy in the 100-meter dash. He is straight up put together. I mean, this is a guy that should be a senior in high school, and he looks like he's been in a college football weight room for the last 3 years. We know he can run the football. I think for a freshman running back that wants to get on the field, how well are you in pass protection? How well are you coming out of the backfield? How's the ball security? And I think for Gideon Davidson specifically, a little bit of a smaller back, although he's put on some weight, how are you physically running the football between the tackles? Those are some of the answers you want to get from Gideon Davidson. It's not as much, hey, do you know how to play the running back position? Because we know he can run the football. But are you reliable in pass protection? Are you holding on to the football? Those are all the things that keep freshmen off the football field. Everything we've heard, Gideon Davidson's going to play. Now, you have some other guys like David to monitor, but to me, I think those are the two that you look at the ceiling of Clemson at the running back position. If this running back position is good in 2025, it probably involves both Adam Randall and Gideon Davidson. Number two, the wide receiver rotation and potentially some four wide receiver sets. And this kind of goes back to our conversation we had with Adam Randall. And that is, look, Adam Randall's one of your best players on offense. Try to get him involved. Who are your best players on the offensive side of the football at the skill spot? It's probably all these wide receivers. Now, in 2024, you rarely saw four wide receiver sets because you had such a good tight end in Jake Bringenstall. Well, I'm not saying the tight end room is bad by any means. I'm fired up to see what Christian Bentacore looks like in the spring game. I think you're hearing a lot of good things from a guy like Brookings as well, who's a freshman. Olsen, Pat Henry, we know can play. But then I look at the wide receiver room and say, all right, TJ Moore, Brian Wesco, Antonio Williams. You don't want to keep those three off the football field at all. Maybe you want to get Tyler Brown on the football field. Maybe you want to get the JUCO or not JUCO transfer, FCS transfer, Tristan Smith involved. You've heard some really good things out of him in spring. You can talk about scheme all you want on the offensive side of the football. One of my biggest things I like to follow is get your best players on the football field. You know, college football, yeah, scheme matters, but it's largely about the Jimmies and Joes. If you have your best players on the football field, chances are good things are going to happen. I'm interested to see how Coach Riley decides to use this pass catcher room, and maybe we see them lean into some more four wide receiver sets because you have so many wide receivers that you think can be difference makers. Now, if Christian Bentacore kind of steps up and becomes maybe Clemson's next Jake Bringenstall, which I think certainly can be a possibility, you probably see more tight ends on the football field. But going into the spring game, maybe we get a little bit of a sense of how Clemson wants to use all these playmakers on the offensive side of the football. That'll be something I'm monitoring. And I think also just, how does Tristan Smith get used in this offense? Where I don't know if he'll be a starter at the wide receiver position, but that's a really big, long, fast body that has a unique set of skills. And this is a guy that it's not like they brought him in and he has 3 years of eligibility left. This is his last year of eligibility. I'm guessing that Dabo Swinney and Clemson, they brought him in for a reason. We know historically, Dabo is not going to bring in guys through the transfer portal that he doesn't think can help him. There's some teams that do that. Dabo ain't one of them. I'm guessing they have an idea of how they want to use Tristan Smith. Maybe we get a sense of how they're going to use him in the spring game Saturday afternoon. Now, going to the defensive side of the football, I think you just start with the storyline of Tom Allen. And what excites me most about Tom Allen is normally when you have a new defensive coordinator, it's kind of a rebuild. When a defensive coordinator gets fired, it's probably because the defense wasn't good. And maybe part of it was the personnel wasn't good. That wasn't really the case for Clemson, right? Wes Goodwin got fired, but it wasn't because this Clemson defense didn't have talent. I was kind of running through the list before we went live here. I mean, we're pushing 8 guys in the front 7 that are NFL dudes. I mean, guys in the 2 deep on this Clemson defensive line will be playing in the NFL. This is a very talented defense. Tom Allen is stepping into a defense that can be one of the better units in the country. Now it's about how do we get the most out of this defense. The storylines that I'm looking for, I think most notably, I don't know how much live football we'll see. How are we tackling in space? That is something that Tom Allen has clearly preached throughout spring practice. But I think just as importantly, how are we using all this front 7 talent? A guy like Sammy Brown, you go back to Tom Allen at Penn State and how they got so creative with a guy like Abdul Carter. Abdul Carter could do what he did at Penn State because he was a freak show. Well, guess what? Sammy Brown is that kind of freak show as well. Going into year 2, the game slowed down for him a little bit. Are we seeing different ways that Tom Allen decides to use a guy like Sammy Brown? Or what about a guy like Jeremiah Alexander, who I think is, from an athletic profile standpoint, pretty freaky dude. Now we just got to figure out how we want to use him. Is he going to come off the edge? Is he going to play off-ball linebacker? How does he get used in the front 7? The personnel usage is probably what I'm most intrigued with. But then also the personnel groupings. How do we get our best 5 on the football field in the secondary? We're not going to see Tom Allen unload the clip in the spring game. You're not going to see even 5% of the Tom Allen defense during the spring game. But from a personnel usage standpoint, from a personnel composition standpoint, maybe we get some answers about what Tom Allen's going to do in 2025. And then I think one of the last storylines is the merging players on the defensive line. And to me, this is one of those storylines where it's like, all right, is Clemson going to be just really good or are they going to be great? We know you have a couple of bona fide studs up front. Peter Woods and TJ Parker starts off with those 2. DeMonte Capron, we've seen play a lot of good football. That's a massive get back for Clemson. You're hearing all the right things about Will Helt. I mean, all 4 of those guys are going to be playing in the NFL after this year. Maybe Will Helt stays for one more year, but TJ Parker and Peter Woods probably 3 and done for Clemson. Really talented. What does the depth look like? Stephylin Green came on in a big way last year. Amare Adams has been getting rave reviews in practice. Vic Burley's a guy that's going into year 3, and I get that it hasn't been great from Vic Burley the first 2 years, especially with some of the expectations we had on him coming out of high school. Well, he's been banged up, hasn't gotten on the football field a ton. All right, is Vic Burley breaking out year 3? Look, not everybody can be Peter Woods and put it all together year 1. It's very realistic that Vic Burley puts it together in year 3. Elite defenses have depth on the defensive line. It's not only about first-line talent. How good is this Clemson depth specifically in the defensive line is probably something you want to find out in spring. And that's one of the best parts about spring is you get to see guys that maybe haven't played a ton. You get to see where they're at going into 2025. Vic Burley, Stephylin Green. I would even say Heaven Brown-Schuler is another guy you're probably monitoring. What does the depth look like on the defensive line? Another intriguing storyline to follow during spring practice. We don't know how many of these guys will play. I know Clemson's dealing with some injuries along both sides of the football. We're going to find out a lot about this team. I'll be listening to the broadcast. I'll certainly be reading kind of the spring game recap, you might say. And y'all are going to let it fly in the comment section for me too, because I know a lot of y'all are going to go to the game. And I'll learn from you guys too. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll be back Saturday afternoon talking about what we've heard and what we've seen. And we'll talk to y'all later.